You reach for honey believing it's pure and natural. You trust the label claiming 100% pure honey means exactly that. You assume the golden liquid provides health benefits, antioxidants, enzymes, vitamins, and minerals that make honey a superfood. Food fraud investigators, laboratory scientists, and beekeeping experts reveal a disturbing reality about honey sold in American supermarkets. The worst honey brands aren't selling you real honey. They're selling adulterated products cut with corn syrup, rice syrup, and sugarcane syrups to maximize profits while deceiving consumers. The fraud isn't occasional mistakes or isolated incidents at single facilities. It's systematic, industry-wide deception, where research suggests up to 76% of honey on American shelves contains additives never disclosed on labels. The honey adulteration crisis escalates beyond simple fraud. Major packers face criminal charges for honey laundering, importing fake Chinese honey contaminated with antibiotics and heavy metals through intermediary countries to avoid massive U.S. tariffs. Laboratory testing reveals toxic HMF compounds from excessive heating, complete absence of pollen that makes origin tracing impossible, and ultrafiltration that strips away every health benefit while allowing contaminated honey to slip past inadequate detection methods. The economic impact devastates legitimate producers. When fake honey floods markets at artificially low prices, honest American beekeepers cannot compete. Domestic honey production collapses while cheap adulterated imports dominate, threatening the entire beekeeping industry and the 90 commercially grown crops that depend on bee pollination. Today, we're counting down the 5 worst honey brands in America according to laboratory testing, food fraud investigators, and honey authenticity experts. From brands with dangerously high toxic compound levels to companies convicted in the largest food fraud case in U.S. history, these represent what experts actively warn consumers to avoid. And stick around until the end. We've got 5 bonus secrets about the honey industry that will fundamentally shock you. The revelations about compromised certification systems and testing loopholes that enable widespread fraud will completely change how you buy honey. Number 5. 365 by Whole Foods Organic Mountain Forest. Honey. The branding is deliberately misleading. Organic mountain forest honey conjures images of bees buzzing around pristine mountain forest. The name creates perception of purity and naturalness that laboratory testing completely contradicts. The testing reveals heating and processing. Independent laboratory analysis shows this honey was heated at high temperatures, destroying the natural enzymes, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that make raw honey valuable. The heating isn't disclosed anywhere on labeling. The texture indicates ultrafiltration. The honey has a syrup-like consistency rather than the natural thickness of genuine honey. This texture suggests the product underwent ultrafiltration, forcing honey through extreme pressure that removes all pollen and beneficial compounds. The color is suspiciously dark. Reviewers note the honey appears darker than expected for mountain forest honey. The unusual coloring combined with syrup-like texture raises serious questions about what processing occurred and what additives may be present. The smell is completely wrong. Multiple consumers report the honey smells like wood glue rather than having the mild floral scent of genuine honey. This chemical smell indicates processing or additives that fundamentally altered the product. The pollen is missing. The syrup-like finish indicates the honey doesn't contain bee pollen, the key indicator of genuine, unfiltered honey. Without pollen, researchers cannot verify the botanical or geographic origin, making fraud detection nearly impossible. The Whole Foods brand creates false trust. Consumers expect higher standards from Whole Foods, the first nationally certified organic grocer in America. The 365 brand exploits that trust to sell ultra-processed honey at premium prices while hiding the extent of processing. Food fraud experts specifically warn that organic certification doesn't guarantee raw, unfiltered honey. The organic label only addresses pesticides and bee treatment, not whether the honey underwent destructive heating and filtration that eliminates health benefits. Number 4. Safeway clover. Honey. The pollen is completely absent. Laboratory testing shows Safeway clover honey contains 0 pollen. This proves the honey underwent ultrafiltration, a process that forces honey through extreme heat and pressure, killing all beneficial qualities. The ultrafiltration hides contamination. Removing all pollen makes it impossible to determine where honey originated. This allows contaminated honey from China or other problematic sources to enter the supply chain undetected. The deliberate pollen removal enables fraud. The heating destroys health benefits. Ultrafiltration requires temperatures around 160–180 degrees Fahrenheit. These extreme temperatures destroy the enzymes, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals that provide honey's health benefits. What remains is essentially expensive sugar syrup. The label provides no origin information. Safeway's packaging doesn't clearly identify where the honey comes from or how it's processed. The vague labeling allows the company to source from anywhere, blend multiple origins, and avoid accountability for quality. The price point encourages volume purchasing. Safeway prices honey competitively to move large volumes. The business model prioritizes quantity over quality, incentivizing the company to source the cheapest possible honey, regardless of adulteration risks. The store brand accountability is minimal. As a house brand, Safeway controls the entire supply chain with little external oversight. The company can change suppliers, processing methods, and quality standards without notifying consumers or updating labels. Honey authenticity experts note that ultra-filtered honey like Safeway's represents the worst of supermarket honey. Stripped of everything that makes honey valuable, then sold as pure while hiding the processing that destroyed its authenticity. Number 3. Nature Nate's raw and unfiltered honey. The marketing is blatantly false. Nature Nate's labels its honey as 100% pure, raw, and unfiltered honey. The assumption is suppliers provide raw honey from honeycombs that Nature Nate's directly bottles. Laboratory testing proves this marketing is completely fraudulent. The honey is heated extensively. Independent testing reveals Nature Nate's honey was heated at high temperatures for easier processing. Nowhere does the 100% pure, raw, and unfiltered labeling disclose this heating. The company deliberately misleads consumers about processing methods. The HMF levels are dangerously high. Testing found high levels of hydroxymethylfurfuryl, HMF, a toxic compound that forms when honey is heated excessively or stored improperly. High HMF indicates either severe heating or extremely old honey, both of which contradict raw honey claims. The syrup additives are suspected. Some testing suggests possible presence of corn or rice syrups mixed into the honey. While difficult to definitively prove with current detection limits, the chemical markers raise serious questions about adulteration beyond just heating. The labeling violates consumer trust. Federal regulations require honest labeling, yet Nature Nate's labels heated, processed honey as raw. This deception cheats consumers who pay premium prices specifically for raw honey's health benefits, then receive processed sugar syrup instead. The brand awareness makes it worse. Nature Nate's is one of the most recognized honey brands in America, with products sold in major retailers nationwide. The massive distribution means millions of consumers are deceived into buying fraudulently labeled honey. The profit margins drive deception. Heating honey speeds processing, prevents crystallization, and makes bottling easier, all reducing costs. Labeling this processed honey as raw allows Nature Nate's to charge premium prices while using cheap processing methods. Food safety investigators specifically identify Nature Nate's as representing systematic consumer fraud in the honey industry, using false raw and unfiltered marketing to sell heated processed products at premium prices. Number 2. Dutch Gold Honey. The Honeygate scandal directly implicates this brand. Dutch Gold Honey was specifically named in major federal lawsuits investigating honey adulteration conspiracies that rocked the industry. The company is one of the largest honey packers in North America, with products distributed to major retailers nationwide, making its involvement in systematic fraud particularly damaging to consumer trust across the entire market. The True Source certification is fundamentally compromised. Dutch Gold actively participates in True Source honey certification, a program supposedly guaranteeing honey authenticity and ethical sourcing. However, explosive lawsuits reveal True Source was literally created by the importers and packers accused of fraud, including Dutch Gold itself, creating a massive conflict of interest that destroys any credibility the certification might claim. The laboratory testing consistently shows adulteration. Independent honey authenticity expert Kent Heitzinger conducted extensive testing of many True Source certified products, including those packaged by Dutch Gold, and found clear evidence of adulteration across multiple samples. Some tested products were so excessively diluted with water that they fermented during storage, creating alcohol levels that would legally be prohibited from sale to minors under beverage alcohol regulations. The importation partners raise serious red flags. Dutch Gold maintains business relationships with honey importers that source from questionable international origins with known contamination and fraud problems, then blend this low-quality, potentially adulterated honey with legitimate products in proportions designed to avoid detection. The sophisticated blending makes definitive proof of fraud difficult while systematically allowing contaminated honey into the American supply chain. The naked wild Great Lakes raw honey marketing is fraudulent. One prominent lawsuit specifically named Dutch Gold's product, marketed prominently as raw and unfiltered, and labeled 100% pure raw honey on packaging, despite bearing True Source certification. Independent laboratory testing strongly suggested the product failed to meet its advertised raw and unfiltered claims, indicating processing that contradicted the prominent marketing. The industrial scale enables systematic fraud. As one of North America's largest honey packers processing massive volumes from multiple sources, Dutch Gold operates at an industrial scale that creates countless opportunities to blend adulterated honey throughout the supply chain while strategically avoiding detection through selective testing of clean batches, while contaminated batches enter distribution. The profit incentives driving fraud are enormous. Authentic, raw, unfiltered honey from legitimate sources costs significantly more than adulterated honey cut with cheap corn or rice syrups. Dutch Gold can dramatically increase profit margins by purchasing adulterated honey at drastically reduced prices, then selling it at premium prices under deceptive labels, claiming purity and raw status that laboratory testing contradicts. The regulatory detection gaps actively enable ongoing fraud. Current FDA testing methodology can only reliably detect adulteration above approximately 20% concentration, meaning honey that contains 18 to 19% corn syrup still passes as pure under inadequate government testing. Dutch Gold and similar large packers exploit these known detection limits to sell systematically adulterated honey while technically passing inadequate tests that regulators never improved. Honey fraud investigators and food safety experts specifically warn that major industrial packers like Dutch Gold, despite prominent True Source certification and pure honey marketing, systematically sell adulterated products because the enormous profit incentives far exceed the minimal risk of getting caught and paying relatively small fines that represent tiny fractions of fraud profits. Number 1. Groeb Farms. Here's the absolute worst according to federal prosecutors and food fraud investigators. Groeb Farms was one of the largest honey suppliers in America before being convicted in the largest food fraud case in U.S. history. The company criminally imported and sold millions of dollars of fake Chinese honey. The criminal conviction is unprecedented. In 2013, Groeb Farms pleaded guilty to purchasing millions of dollars in laundered honey from China. The company paid millions in fines after admitting to systematic fraud that flooded the American market with adulterated, contaminated honey for years. The Chinese honey was toxic and fake. Chinese honey is notorious for containing antibiotics, heavy metals including lead, and extensive adulteration with corn and rice syrups. The U.S. imposed massive tariffs to block Chinese honey due to these contamination and fraud issues. The laundering scheme circumvented tariffs. To avoid U.S. tariffs on Chinese honey, Groeb Farms imported honey through other countries that disguised the Chinese origin. The honey was transshipped through intermediary nations, relabeled, and entered the U.S. market fraudulently. The scale of fraud was massive. Groeb Farms operated this criminal scheme for years, importing and distributing enormous quantities of fake Chinese honey throughout America. The contaminated product reached countless consumers who believed they were buying genuine American honey. The lawsuit against Groeb was historic. 3 major U.S. honey producers, 80 Honey Farms, Bill Rhodes Honey Company, and Hackenberg Apiaries, filed landmark lawsuit against Groeb Farms. The case, nicknamed Honeygate, exposed systematic honey adulteration across the industry. The impact on legitimate beekeepers was devastating. Group's fake Chinese honey flooded markets at artificially low prices, making it impossible for honest American beekeepers to compete. The fraud nearly destroyed domestic honey production as cheap adulterated honey undercut genuine products. The testing inadequacy enabled years of fraud. Groeb Farms exploited FDA testing limitations that couldn't detect sophisticated adulteration. The 20% detection threshold meant Groeb could sell honey with 19% corn syrup while passing as pure under inadequate testing. The company culture was criminally corrupt. Federal investigation revealed Groeb Farms knowingly purchased fraudulent honey despite obvious red flags about origin and quality. The corporate decision to prioritize profits over legality and consumer safety represents systematic criminal behavior. The market dominance amplified damage. As one of America's largest honey suppliers, Groeb Farms didn't just sell fake honey to consumers, it supplied adulterated honey to manufacturers who used it in countless food products. The fraud contaminated the entire supply chain. The aftermath reveals ongoing problems. While Groeb Farms was convicted and fined, the underlying fraud continues. Other companies learned to be more careful avoiding detection rather than stopping adulteration. The Honeygate scandal exposed an industry-wide problem that persists today. Federal prosecutors, food fraud investigators, and honey authenticity experts universally identify Groeb Farms as representing the absolute worst of honey industry fraud. Criminal conspiracy to flood American markets with toxic, fake Chinese honey for years, while destroying legitimate beekeepers and deceiving millions of consumers. Beyond the 5 worst honey brands, investigators reveal 5 bonus secrets. Bonus Secret 1. Up to 76% of supermarket honey is fake. The adulteration is widespread and systematic. Studies suggest that up to 76% of honey sold in American supermarkets contains some level of adulteration. This isn't isolated fraud, it's industry standard practice to cut honey with cheaper syrups. The European Union found 46% adulteration. A 2023 EU investigation testing 320 honey products found 147, 46%, contained suspicious adulterants like rice and wheat syrups. This represents massive improvement in detection methods revealing fraud that previous testing missed. The FDA found 10 to 14% violative. FDA testing of imported honey found 10% violative in 2021-22 and 3% in 2022-23. However, these figures only reflect what current inadequate testing can detect. The actual adulteration rate is certainly much higher. The detection limits allow fraud to pass. Current FDA testing can only detect adulteration above approximately 20%. Honey that's 15 to 19% corn syrup passes as pure. This enormous detection gap enables systematic fraud while allowing companies to claim products pass testing. Bonus Secret 2. Pure honey. Labels are meaningless. The term has no legal enforcement. Federal regulations define honey but don't adequately enforce labeling standards. Companies routinely label heated, ultra-filtered, adulterated honey as pure because enforcement is virtually non-existent. The state regulations vary wildly. Each state has different honey labeling standards with varying requirements for origin disclosure, USDA grading, and manufacturer information. Many states exempt small businesses entirely, creating regulatory chaos that enables fraud. The ingredient list lies by omission. Honey labels listing only honey can still contain undisclosed corn syrup, rice syrup, or other adulterants. Companies aren't required to disclose many types of adulteration, allowing fraudulent products to appear legitimate. Bonus Secret 3. True source certification is compromised. The certification was created by importers and packers. True source. Honey certification was established by the very companies accused of honey fraud, including major importers and packers. This massive conflict of interest destroys certification credibility. The testing methods are antiquated. Lawsuits claim true source uses outdated testing techniques that can't detect modern adulteration methods. The certification relies on obsolete technology specifically because it fails to catch sophisticated fraud. The certified honey fails independent testing. Multiple laboratory analyses of true source certified honey found evidence of adulteration, heating, and fermentation. Products bearing the certification routinely fail to meet basic authenticity standards when tested independently. Bonus secret 4. Ultrafiltration destroys everything valuable. The process removes all pollen. Ultrafiltration forces honey through extreme heat and pressure, removing every trace of pollen. Without pollen, the honey loses traceability and the beneficial compounds that make honey valuable for health. The health benefits are completely eliminated. The enzymes, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals in raw honey are destroyed by ultrafiltration. What remains is sugar syrup with zero nutritional advantages over corn syrup or table sugar. The contamination hiding is intentional. Removing pollen makes it impossible to determine geographic origin. This allows honey containing antibiotics, heavy metals, and other contaminants to enter supply chains undetected because researchers can't trace where it came from. Bonus secret 5. Legitimate beekeepers are being destroyed. The adulterated honey undercuts prices. Fake honey costs far less to produce than genuine honey. When markets flood with cheap adulterated products, honest beekeepers cannot sell legitimate honey at prices covering production costs. The domestic production is collapsing. U.S. honey production has plummeted as cheap imported fake honey dominates markets. The shift from domestic to imported honey correlates directly with the rise of widespread adulteration. The bee population impact threatens food supply. As beekeepers go out of business due to honey fraud, bee populations critical for pollinating 90 commercially grown U.S. crops decline. The fake honey crisis threatens the entire food system by destroying beekeeping economics. These 5 honey brands, 365 by Whole Foods, Safeway, Nature Nate's, Dutch Gold, and especially Groeb Farms, represent the worst of American honey fraud. The pattern is consistent. Systematic adulteration with undisclosed syrups, ultrafiltration that destroys health benefits, false raw and pure labeling, and exploitation of inadequate testing that can't detect sophisticated fraud. The criminal convictions, laboratory testing revealing toxic compounds, complete absence of pollen, fraudulent certifications, and systematic deception proves these brands prioritize profits over providing genuine honey. Food fraud investigators, honey authenticity experts, and federal prosecutors all agree. These products don't deserve to be called honey. Protect yourself by buying only from local beekeepers where you can verify the source. Look for raw, unfiltered honey that crystallizes naturally. Avoid any honey that stays permanently liquid, lacks pollen when examined, or comes from major supermarket brands with vague origin information. If this video helped you understand which honey brands to avoid, hit that like button. Subscribe to The Hidden Menu for more food fraud investigations that expose what the honey industry doesn't want you to know. And drop a comment below. Which of these brands shocked you most, or have you been buying fake honey without realizing it? Your awareness helps protect other consumers. Remember, if your honey never crystallizes, smells like chemicals, and costs suspiciously little, you're probably eating corn syrup, not honey.